On this lesson, we're looking at two function words, and function, also the or function. Now on the screen you can see I've written down the and. The or function is exactly the same except the word would say or as its function word. Now we use this to ask more than one question. If you've watched previous lessons, you'll know that we talk about the if function allows you to ask either one question or you can ask multiple questions one after the other. But sometimes you want to ask more than one question all at the same time. Here's an example. If we use just a standard if function, and by the way, if you haven't watched the video on the if, then we recommend you do that before continuing with this one. We can check either the quantity that they purchased or this column here, whether or not they got a clean payment history. Now, why do I want to check both? Because if we have a look at the top here, we can see that if a customer orders over 30 bottles and has a clean payment history, only then are they entitled to a cheaper price. If I use just a single if, then it can only ask one question. So this is where we can use this one here, this function word, which is written like this, and as many questions as you like. Now I'm showing it here with just two logic statements, but you could do a comma and another question, comma, another question, and so on. The one thing I say to most people is when you look at this, think of this comma here in the middle representing the word at the front. So in other words, this really says, has the customer ordered more than 30 bottles and have they got a clean payment history? Now because we're using the and logic, that means that we must answer yes to both questions for it to be a yes or a true. If we weren't concerned on both of them being true, as long as one of them was true, then we would change the and to an or function, and that would then say, has the customer ordered over 30 bottles or do they have a clean payment history? Either one will do. So we're going to stick with the and function on here. Now, one thing to remember about the and or function is that they're not often used on their own, and there's a reason for that, because they only return one of two values, either a true or a false. So if I was to use this function word on its own, the answer I will get appear on the screen would either be the word true or the word false, which doesn't really mean much to us. And that's why you find that these are often nested in other functions. Now this would work fine nested in here. I could take all of this here and I could put it in this part of an if function where the question is asked. Now we've nested this and function inside the if, we can read it to be if the customer has purchased more than 30 bottles and has a clean payment history. If the answer to both of those is yes or true, then perform whatever's in the true. Otherwise, perform the false. Let's put this into practice. So over here, we'll concentrate just on the lemonade drink. It is a formula, so we begin with equals. We type the if and open bracket. Now it's asking for the logical test, the question. Now at this point, because I know I need to ask two questions, I'm going to use the AND function. Now watch what happens to that bubble help at the bottom. It's currently showing us the bubble help for the if function. As soon as I start to type a new function word, in this case AND open bracket, now look at the bubble help. As far as Excel's concerned, it's put the if function on the back burner. It's concentrating just on the AND function. And you can see that it's asking for the logical 1, the logical 2, 3, 4. In other words, the question 1, question 2. So I again would read this as I see it on the screen. I would say if the quantity is greater than, using the open chevron, 30, and remember that comma represents that function word, and this cell next to me equals the word yes. Remember in previous lessons we've spoken about if you need to put plain text that's not a function or a command in among a function word, you have to surround it with speech marks. I've now finished with that and I closed the bracket. I've finished with my AND. As soon as I do that closing bracket, you'll notice that the bubble help now reverts back to the if function because I'm returned back to my if function. I've finished with the question part of my if. So I do comma. Now it's asking for the value if it's true. If it's true, then I'm going to give them a cheaper price of £5 per bottle. So I want it to work this out, how much they owe me, which is quantity multiplied by the £5, comma. Now it's asking for the value if it's false. In other words, they haven't got a clean payment history, or maybe they haven't ordered more than 30 bottles, in which case they've got to pay £8 each. So I want it to do quantity multiplied by the £8. I can close the bracket for the if, and there's my function. If I enter that, I get the price. Now again, I can copy this down to give me the results. Now it's always worth testing these before you continue. If we have a look at this, and if we pick out the water here, they've bought 250 bottles, so they qualify for the over 30 bottles. They've also got a clean payment history. So because it's a tick for this and tick for this, they get the drink for £1 per bottle. So that's 250 times £1 gives us £250. Now what if one of these criteria isn't true? In other words, what if they didn't have a clean payment history? If I change this to a no, they're having to pay £2 per bottle, even though they qualify here because they bought over 30 bottles. They don't qualify because they don't have a clean payment history. And that is using the AND and OR function within Excel.